Welcome to another episode of the Testing Peers. This week we are joined by a special guest. I will introduce him first. So welcome Ben to join the co-host crew.
Hello.
And some of our regulars are back. Mr. David Maynard.
Hello.
We have Chris Armstrong.
Ahoy.
And you've got myself, Russell Craxford. So welcome to listening to us. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about, I forgot what we're going to talk about, learning fast. So I guess before we go into what learning fast is all about, we probably should do a bit of our usual banter. So Ben, I believe you're on banter duties.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a very positive banter this time, and I'm going to go for reasons to be cheerful. So there we go. So Chris, do you have a reason to be cheerful?
Yes. I have been reminded this week that I was added by a friend of the podcast, Emna Ayadi, to the French test community Slack workspace. And I was originally cajoled into joining it because Emna is trying to actively push me into remembering how to speak French. So this week I went back on to the Slack workspace and I requested some time of some people who'd be willing to hear my broken French to let me be able to speak French a bit more broken in a professional context. And a lovely chap from Strasbourg named Davey, who does listen to the podcast, hi Davey, has agreed to give up some of his lunch times to speak with me so I can get a little bit better at speaking French about testing and agility. We spoke a bit about silos and teams this week, which was really exciting. So that's quite fun, isn't it? Because, trying to move away from just saying, baguette and oué la piscine is quite nice.
I'm grateful that I'm privileged, I guess, a bit. I have a job. It's relatively stable. That's a privilege. It's not a guarantee that you get these days. I'm grateful I've got friends. I'm grateful that, every week I can get on the phone and get onto a Zoom call and talk amongst peers and actually have enjoyable conversation with people. And not everyone has that. Not everyone has those peers that they can speak to. So I'm grateful for that. So that's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, so I'm also grateful for this podcast. I think it's great. I'm grateful that we're over however many years down the line at 100+ episodes, and the conference we've had. I would say that I'm also grateful for the nice weather we're having and being able to go to some out of open air concerts, and also going on holiday next week. So, and just not planning to do anything apart from read a couple of books. So I'm very grateful for that.
I'll finish this off. I'll get back on. So grateful is awesome. The bants was cheerful, but it's close enough. I am very cheery right now, and very grateful for the fact that there's this really big relief coming because I'm nearing the end of a project and approaching a deadline, and looking forward to the fact that just after the planned release, I'm booked to go on holiday for 2 weeks. So that is making me very, very cheerful indeed. So not only will I be finished with said project, I'll also then be running away and taking some time off, which I am very cheerful about indeed.
Some lovely positivity, isn't it? So it's probably good that positivity takes us into our topic today. So we framed it learn fast. And I think I'm partly one of the drivers for that because I prefer that term. But it comes from kind of the idea of fail fast. And obviously, we want people to experiment. We want people to fail. To learn is the point. That's the reason for the failure. I think it was Thomas Edison that said that, when he'd done like 10,000 experiments to create the light bulb, etc., that he hadn't found 10,000 ways. He found 10,000 ways it wouldn't work. It hadn't failed. They're just ways it didn't work. And I guess that's a lot of kind of the learning culture that we want. We want people to try things that will fail. But the point of that failure is to learn from it. We're not driving failures in general. We want to try and achieve a better place. So I have a thing where I think psychologically the word fail isn't a comfortable word for many people. But the purpose of that failure is learning. So I personally prefer that framing of learning fast. But what's the peers' thoughts?
So this is one of the main reasons why I really like exploratory testing, and I especially like framing with my team. Here is some exploration that I'm going to do, and the outcome is not going to be a pass or a failure. The outcome is going to be we learn some knowledge that helps us make some future decisions. Like we learn a new boundary of the system, we gain some information. And I think that framing is really healthy, and it helps us like have that more experimental mindset. So I did some good exploratory testing this week where I wasn't looking for a pass or a fail. I was really looking for, right, how old a phone can I get and it still works? Like at what, okay, I was looking for a fail. At what point does it fail? But I was really looking for, like, where is the boundary here? What do we learn from this? And I didn't turn around and go, oh, look, your code is rubbish. I found where it fails. But, oh, look, it works all the way back to this. And if we want it to work further, we're going to have to look into it. But like, works all this way back. And I appreciate that's a very direct testing reference rather than more of a educational learning and like growing reference. But I still like that framing.
Yeah, it's relevant, isn't it?
I find myself very much leaning towards that. Like, if I know everything, what am I doing? What's my purpose? Like, as a tester, I'm naturally very inquisitive. And I'm curious, and I'm trying to find stuff out the whole time. I'm critically appraising things. And if that doesn't exist, if I don't see there's some sort of motion, some movement, it doesn't have to be forwards, it can be lateral, it can be other sorts of things, both with my own personal career, but also with the way I'm testing. Like, I'm not really sufficiently pleased if I feel that there's more to go. And I always want to find out more things. I want to learn new things. I feel like that's what makes you sharper, makes you feel a deeper understanding of yourself and your environment and your context. And I don't really believe you can ever complete it, that sort of 100% thing. People used to say that about Tetris, but obviously that recently just got completed. But that did take some 40 years or so. Like, but you can find yourself sometimes getting into a rut, standing still with the world moving around you, and that's not a great place to be. Whether that's testing ideas, or with your own career, or with relationships, or where you are in the workplace, and I think most of us need time to breathe and stay still sometimes, but there will come that time when the boredom's kicked in, the creativity kicked in, but even that's dried up. That's not a place I want to be. I want to be in that sort of creative loop.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that actually we don't hold all the knowledge in every area. And actually being humble and going, that's an area that isn't my expertise, but actually go and speak to so and so. They will know a bit more detail. Don't try and hoodwink other people into trying to give this persona that actually you are the oracle on everything, because you put yourself into a lot of stress for a start, but also you can be found out eventually. Everyone only has a certain amount in order to, and if you claim to be an expert at other things, sometimes people will try and test you to try and catch you out, and you can hold on for a certain amount of time, but eventually you will be found out. There will be a chink in your armor. So there's no point in putting yourself under that much stress. From when I was a teacher, one thing that I did recognize is that actually if you don't know something, then be honest in going, I don't know, but actually then take some excitement of learning about it and then giving it back to them. They might well have forgotten that they've asked the question, but actually they respect you because you found out the answer, but also you've enhanced your life a little bit more because you've expanded your knowledge, even if it's an area that's sort of at right angles. And that sort of again goes back to the sort of exploratory testing, is that the beauty of exploratory testing is that you open up opportunities to expand your knowledge for your particular thing, rather than being sort of just going down one path. And okay, in one particular session, you don't automatically go down those things, but you can then reassess as to which are the most important paths to actually go. But having greater knowledge or a greater understanding of a larger thing certainly so much helps. And sometimes I think that even as testers, we get sort of blinkered into one sort of path, into, oh my God, I can only do this. And actually giving yourself the time to actually breathe really openly and just look at the bigger picture and see where you have, and also look at what you have learned, is really important, because sometimes we can get too caught up in the moment as to exactly what's happening at that particular time, and not appreciate where we've come from and what we still have to do.
I can relate to that a lot, David, and I really think that the more often I say I don't know, and I show other people I don't know, and I ask for help, and I say, and this is how I'm going to go try and find out, the more other people open up and are willing to say they don't know as well. And I often find that by being quick to say that I don't know, I encourage other people, and I really like it when other people are the same and they say, I don't know, but let's go look at it together. Like that's the best outcome for me, is I don't know something and I ask my teammates to go, ooh, I don't know this. Does anyone else know it? And if someone else says, no, I don't know either, but let's go find out together, that's like the best outcome for me. 'Cause not only do we both not know, that's fine, because we're both going to find a way to find out together. That's like chef's kiss, the best result for me in
It's
terms
like a
of fast
superpower.
learning.
It's like having a superpower into, because we are fallible. Even Superman is fallible against Krypton.
It's also I think quite powerful when you uncover information to provide that information to people. Like keeping that information to yourself kind of doesn't provide any value. That knowledge isn't really powerful if you just got it to yourself. It's shared knowledge is powerful. And so I find if I know something that's quite interesting or quite cool or that would be helpful, I take a lot of value and heart in being able to then articulate that in a way that is helpful and useful to other people. It strengthens my understanding, but also enables other people to go ahead with their things. I think I'm sort of distracted by the fact you said superpower as well, David. I seem to remember it would have been a test bash home a couple of years ago. Ben Dowen, full snack tester, present here today, he said that feedback was a superpower. Giving feedback is a superpower, and I think the same is true, like you say, of providing that there's a power of providing and modeling humility, but also providing feedback and providing information to the right people in the right manner. That's a really exciting thing, and that in and of itself, learning your audience, learning how to push appropriate information in front of their faces and sharing things with people and teaching people, that's a really exciting thing to learn, because you can't teach different people the same way all the time, because we all learn differently at different paces and we consume content in different ways, don't we?
That's very conscientious of you, Chris. I really appreciate that. It helps me as well just pull on a different thread, which is one of the things I was thinking about recently, is that building software, understanding the quality of software and making an attempt to improve that software is really dependent on feedback. And I think learning fast in terms of software quality, in terms of testing, is all about figuring out high quality ways of getting feedback. And that might be feedback like, is this product well received by the market? Not just does it do the thing we expected, but is that valuable for someone else? And I really do think that the power of great testing is that it is can be a very high quality form of feedback, but it's also not the only high quality form of feedback. And I really do think that getting high quality feedback is really important if you're going to learn quickly. So learning fast, I think, really requires us to set up feedback loops, of which testing is one approach, but there are other parts to it. And I think that's true of personal learning and personal growth, or team learning and team growth, but it's also this kind of a similar concept for helping a product grow and improve quickly. It's still all about feedback loops.
Have any of you ever played sort of what it's called testing Jenga? If that makes any sense. It's a game designed to demonstrate the value of feedback, and how teams can work together, testers and developers or other people can work together. And doing it using Jenga blocks that are numbered. And obviously a number ends up representing a defect, that the people working together, and you do it as a kind of a demonstration of the value of feedback loops, and by shortening the feedback loop. So you do a demonstration of spend 5 minutes, build a tower that's this height, then find the defects. And obviously half the time the tower never stands. And that's more of a kind of a big iteration type model. Then you do it in smaller iterations, which is a bit more of a kind of a scrummy type time box style. And then you do it continuous feedback, continuous testing, where you work hand in hand together at the same time, removing defects as you find them. And it demonstrates how much faster and how much you learn and how much you build it, and you adapt your build process as you go, because you're learning as you go. It's a really good practical demonstration of some of the sort of learning things that we're talking about, I think. It shows lots of other things, but we'll share a link in the notes, I guess. But it's a really good way of getting teams to understand that if you know everything up front, Big Bang can be quite a good and useful process. If you don't, it's high risk and high complexity. Small and frequent feedback loops gives you higher value, and you learn faster, you can adapt faster. But it all depends on context. If I'm writing an email, I write the whole email first, then get some feedback on it if it's a small email. But if I'm writing kind of a 300-page Word document or a book, I might get each chapter reviewed. I might even do it collaboratively with 2 other people, because I'll learn differently. And same with test cases. If I'm thinking about tests and could be doing brainstorming and kind of mind maps, I might do that together, or I might do that and kind of get feedback on a little bit before I continue, or on a couple of exploratory sessions, or a couple of written test cases, so that I can get the feedback loops to be shorter as appropriate. And as the risk changes, I can change that feedback loop. The more certainty that exists, the feedback loop can change. So it's just interesting.
There's an element there of learning how to be resilient and to see lots of feedback changes, learning to adapt and change based on that, and doing that with a group, and learning how to work within those dynamics, as well as, you know, in fast-paced environments where we're releasing many different things and having to roll forward, roll backwards, and deal with different risks as they change. That level of learning and quickly adapting is something that we're not necessarily taught. We might have to learn on the job. Sometimes people can be calm in pressured situations, but to be able to make reasoned decisions, informed decisions, and to provide that information under high pressure environments, while maybe not desirable to be in those situations, it is a skill, and learning how you react in those different situations will help you to work within your teams, because we will all fit differently into different scenarios. We're all in different seasons and different cycles. Sometimes we need the holiday more desperately than the next person. Sometimes, you know, we're more informed, or things happen in life. And learning that people bit alongside what's going on in the tech world, or any dependencies and things. It's that level of resilience and learning your own tells, your own signs, things that will show when you know you're in good health and not. And same with your team. It's tricky. It's not always data, is it? But there is some really great data that you can sometimes get for these things.
I've got a question for the group, and that is, one thing I really think is, if it's really important to get feedback and to have feedback loops and to learn things quickly, and to have this quick learning, fast learning, what you do with that learning. So the question is, have you ever been in a situation where you've learned something quickly but had no opportunity to change things. So either that's a fixed requirement, and even though you've learned something, you simply have no chance to change that requirement, or you've learned something and you have no chance to kind of change the process or how you do things.
Got some abstract ones that don't quite fit though, I don't think. So I've had, like, as a consultant, where we've had contractual signs to do certain things, and it clearly makes no sense to continue doing that certain thing. Classic one was, we will automate some tests, and actually the system was just not stable, constantly changing, and no form of thing. So automating it would be a complete waste right now, because there wasn't something to automate. It would be changing. So, but contractually, we were obliged to automate it. So I've had the situation where I've got to automate something that I know is just completely worth it because of a contractual obligation. However, I was able to renegotiate the contract in the end, but it was at the point that nearly we had people in the sales department saying you must do it, otherwise we're in breach, and then we had me saying it's pointless. You had the customer eventually persuaded that yeah, there's no value, but it was really frustrating because it was hard to change that contract, so to speak.
I think they've got lots of examples where time and money and budget, especially on client projects for a consultancy, mean that information is lost, or information is only kept within one person's head just because we haven't got the capacity to actually implement these particular changes, or what we've learned as part of that. And that can, further down the line, that can cause all sorts of problems, because it's intrinsic knowledge that should have been put down, but it's either lost because the person has moved on, or it's been forgotten about. One of the classic things is, onboarding. You may have to set up your computer in a particular way and install certain different things, and there may be idiosyncrasies of the way that it's been set up, and those idiosyncrasies may not necessarily be written down. So the next person comes along and goes, oh yes, okay, yeah, there is that problem. Yeah, so and so had that problem. Go and see them, and then they've got to remember, and everyone knows how bad my memory is, that I find it difficult, and so therefore I'd need to go through my notes and try and find out exactly what it was that I needed to actually do. So I do think that it's difficult sometimes in order to give yourself the time and the space, because caught up in the sort of the speed of delivery and things like that, then these small sort of parts that can be quite significant can easily be forgotten.
There is a thing, isn't there, about comments, the value of those sorts of things. We find stuff out. We work asynchronously. It's good to be able to pop those things that we've learned up and share them, whether that's comments in the version control, comments in your ticketing system or your bug system or your test management solution or your Slacks or whatever. There's a lot of value that can be gained from those bits again. So we don't need to rely on a human as being alive and around at the time to sort of pass that sort of stuff on. I think we've probably learned enough about people being gatekeepers of information and not really enjoying that very much. I was thinking, Ben, when I was testing computer games, I remember joining projects just as they were about to go to compliance, just to pass through to get released, and you'd find some bugs and they'd be like, oh, if only you were here earlier, we could have done something about it. So then the lesson learned was there, well, if I'm ever on a project earlier, I'm going hunting for those sorts of things that aren't going to make it, because the closer you get to deadlines, the more people are willing to let things slide, and then the pride you take in the quality of the product you're releasing reduces, because you're like, I know it's being shipped with known issues, and that sucks.
That's really interesting, Chris, because it changes that dynamic of, it's not just about learning fast, it's about the time and rhythm of the project or the process, where there's actually a window where learning things has a big impact because change is cheaper, and there's a time where we can have all, like, anything other than an epiphany that the world would end if we continue with what we're doing won't stop the ship from shipping, right? It's too late. It's like things have to be miserably broken if you find them at the last minute. Otherwise, it's going out whether you like it or not. Whereas if you manage to find that fundamental flaw, as you were kind of saying earlier, before the contractual agreements are signed or before the project plan's committed, or at whatever point is that point of no return, the more you know earlier is good. But that doesn't feel like a surprise. Knowing things earlier means we can learn in a way that's impactful. But I'm going to throw it out there and say, does that mean that there's value in trying to create systems that expect change instead of systems that expect us to find problems, right? Like, so systems that account for the fact that you will not implement the original requirement, right? Like, I think it's now at a point where if you actually start a project and any assumption is made that the thing that you build will be the same thing as the thing you design, you can already assume that's a failure, right? I think we should start building systems where we make the fundamental assumption that we start with an idea that we will iterate on that will not be the same at the end, right? We need to break that cycle of, oh, we've got a good idea. It's like, you have an idea, we don't know if it's good yet. let's try something,
No,
and
you've got to
break it
fully
down.
design that thing end to end, sign it into a contract and not deviate from it, and hit your deadline on time.
Statements of
Very
work,
conscientious of you, Chris.
statements of work are part of the contract. That is the contract, and you stick to it.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of the brilliance of agility there, where we have ideas and then we collaboratively share and experiment and understand and shape and build things relevant to the client as we all learn together. And I'm here for it.
I think another thing that I'd like to point out is that I think that learning can be fun, and actually it can also be, we've mentioned collaboration, but you can learn things as a group. You can have code katas, you can learn new languages as a collective. You do need to appreciate that people have different learning speeds, and so therefore don't go down the route too much. But actually, you can then all support yourselves. We mentioned about learning, languages before, and again, that's a collaborative thing. You can't, I know we have Duolingo and other apps, but actually interacting with people is far different than just learning rote and actually being challenged with these things, and having someone to talk to about it is really good, because they will ask questions about it, and therefore they will then stretch your knowledge, or you can share your knowledge, or allowing you to ask questions of them, if they're sharing their knowledge with you. So that is we are humans, we enjoy interaction, we're talking here, we're expanding people's understanding of topics throughout all the podcasts that we've done. And it's really important. And we do challenge each other. We do talk about each other. We do question that, we thank you, Ben, today for challenging us with extra questions and stuff. And that's how we learn. That's how we expand our knowledge and learning from each other.
Well, I've got a note to add on this thing called AI. So I've had quite a lot of discussions about AI. It seems to be stuff that people are interested in and isn't going to go away, and we're going to be hopefully using it well in the future. But one of the warnings that I saw recently around large language models and things like this is the danger is people treating the output from AI as the truth. These large language models, they are learning based on input. It's not the truth. And the example I have, the sort of stark warning I have of how we shouldn't do this, is I worked in a place where we had to do big test events interfacing with lots of different things, and lots of different companies all had to work on a same system, and we all turned up having configured ourselves to work based on standards and requirements, and there was 7 different groups there, and the first test run, 1 passed, 6 failed. The one that passed were celebrating, saying how wonderful and great they were. Lo and behold, there was a bug in that tool. They had chosen to deviate from standards and requirements to correct their own software to pass based on a tool. Once that tool was corrected, that one was failing and the other 6 started to pass. It's where is your truth? What is your truth? I want us to continue to learn and understand these things, because it's really like scary otherwise.
I'm going to throw something out there, Chris, and I'm going to say, I think the problem of evaluating what is true is a problem that we already had before we have AI and large language models. And I think it's a problem that's often made worse by any formal system or any computerized system, because just because you give someone the output, like you say, from a tool, you can automatically make the assumption that, oh, this tool said it's correct, therefore it has to be correct. And I don't think it actually takes much to do that. Like, even if it's something as simple as person A writes something on pen and paper, then person B questions them and they've got it written down, they go, oh yeah, maybe I wrote that down wrong. But if they put that into a spreadsheet and share it, it's written down somewhere that looks really official. It must be the correct answer because it's been written down on the computer, therefore it's correct. Like, it doesn't, I don't think it takes much before you get that psychological bias towards I forget which is it, the confirmation bias probably. And now you're all going to say yes, and yeah, we're going to agree together. That's going to be great, isn't it? But I don't think it takes much to get that bias towards something feeling correct because it's written down in a way that looks right, even without the AI tools.
But yeah, I mean, but you put it on the head. Biases. We will build biases into AI and large language models. We will absolutely. You can fudge the system, and we all have. We're going down a route, but again, with learning, choose your oracles, choose your sources. We're inundated with news channels, and some people will say that this particular news channel is more unbiased than this one. They all have their biases, they all have their control, and it's really important to be able to try your best to unpick what biases there are. But it's it is really important to make sure that we have as good an understanding as we can. But absolutely, whether it's AI or whether it's a book that was written, even books that are written relatively recently, is old news. Things may well have moved on in that time, and so actually our knowledge is basically at a certain time using a certain set of resources. There's a quiz show called QI, and they base lots of quizzes sort of go, okay, it's based on current knowledge, but 2 months down the line, that current knowledge has expanded just because of what we are currently capable of. So actually, I think I remember watching an episode going, we have remarked everyone's scores based on current knowledge, and actually some people that were in negative figures were massively positive because they actually gave answers that was actually correct, even though they did it in a funny way because it's a comedy show. It is purely based on our current knowledge, and because we're expanding all the time, our current knowledge can be changed.
And there's power in that. Sorry, I was saying very, very quickly. There's power in declaring something as true when it isn't. We see this in newspapers. People publish a truth. That stuff stays tarnished, to Ben's point earlier. Forever, people read that and they find it, and it becomes truth. A retraction might be on page 6 when the truth, the false truth, was on the front page. That sort of stuff.
All I was going to say is, that's the power of experimentation, is because actually what we do know is in that context. We're trying it. Classic one I always come across is, this hasn't worked. This didn't work. We can't try that again. It's like, look, if it didn't work last week, I get not trying it again this week. if 7 years ago, with a completely different team of you're the only remaining person exists on a different tech stack, this idea didn't work. Why? Who did what, when, how exactly? And most of the time they don't know the answer to that thing. So if it's only going to be a few days of effort, could be worth to re-examine that and do another experiment, because all the sort of the conditions are changed. So it doesn't mean it won't work now. It doesn't mean it will either. But it's a classic one. It's like, oh yeah, we can't automate this. It's like, well, the technology's changed, the tools have changed. Maybe you can now. Just because you couldn't doesn't mean it won't ever work. But you've got to balance that. If you try that experiment every single day for life, you're wasting a lot of effort. So you've got to know when to re-examine information, when to look at it alternatively, when to ask and re-examine the facts. Because if they did that QI thing that David mentioned the week after, probably wouldn't have made a difference. A month after, might have been a slight tweak. Years after, probably significant difference. So it's all about making sure you pick appropriately. But there's no such thing as we did it once, done. As I said, like we started with the quote from Edison, didn't we? When he tried 10,000 times to sort of like light bulb out, and they were all experiments. He learned something from each and every one, not how not to do it. So they all tell us something.
I like that so much, and you know what? It made me think of something that I have continued to learn again and again, which is that there are things we need to often not just learn fast, but unlearn fast. And unlearning can be really, really powerful. And
a whole different topic, Ben.
A whole different topic. Yeah, perhaps we should save that one for a different day. But yeah,
next time you're on, Ben, unlearning fast.
Unlearning. Don't choose the Bart Simpson method. But thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Ben, Russell, David. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our lovely listeners. Thank you for your continued feedback. We like to continue learning how to make ourselves more relevant and interesting, and we appreciate your feedback too. If you do want to give us feedback, you've already found us here, but you can find us on the socials. We're mostly active on LinkedIn. We are in some other places, but you can also email us, contact us at testingpeers.com. And PeersCon 25 is happening March 13th, 2025 in Nottingham, UK. Please look at testingpeerscon.com. You can get tickets. Early bird is £15 only for you to come, and we would love to see you there. Programme committee and theme and call for papers coming very, very soon. Ben, Dowen, looking at you. My friends, thank you once again, and we shall see you / speak to you / you listen to us next time.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.